Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. Welcome to a brief port report for Street Fighter V on PC. It might be a bit broken right now. Just a little bit. I think this is a new error message, though. It's an exciting new error message. There was a different one last night. Disconnected from the game server. Very exciting. Well, unfortunately, Street Fighter V is launched on both PC and, I believe, PlayStation 4 with some pretty severe server problems, and since it's far more interconnected than previous Street Fighter games, by which I mean haha, always online for the most part, then inevitably we ran into server problems. Now, some people are going to say, well, what did you expect? Well, frankly, better than this. Is that okay? Is it okay for me to expect better? I think it's okay to expect better. Just because a lot of servers do go down on launch day, and just because a lot of companies do screw it up, does not mean that we should not be able to expect better. So, I currently can't get online whatsoever. It does, however, have an offline mode, which is nice. You eventually get there. So, I can talk you through some settings and some PC stuff. So, for this, I am using a hitbox controller. Now, this is my preferred controller. I find it a lot easier to use than most others. I used to use a Saturn pad, but I actually switched over the hitbox, and I like it quite a lot. However, if you happen to use any controller that is not X input, that means it's not Xbox 360 or Xbox One directly compatible, the game does not support it out of the box. This is a pretty huge omission. Now, they claim they're going to add direct input support at a later date. Why isn't it in the box from day one? I mean, did they not think that this was somehow important? I just want to point out, by the way, that this game was launched on PlayStation 4 and PC with cross-platform multiplayer, a rare thing in this day and age, and a welcome thing. And yet, the controller of the main machine they launched on, the PlayStation 4, is not directly supported in the PC version. But the Xbox, a platform which isn't getting the game, has support. Okay, great. That makes no damn sense at all. So, you can use these controllers if you use an external third-party application. I'm using Xpadder, and I'll actually upload the settings file for you, just in case you happen to have a hitbox as well. So all I did was I rebound the keys from the keyboard to my hitbox using Xpadder. So when I press a button on Xpadder, it's actually sending a signal through the keyboard to the game. So the game is being tricked into believing that I'm using the keyboard. Now, of course, that means that all of the inputs that come up on screen, well, they're not keyboard inputs. But it's okay, because they never were anyway. By the way, that's not okay. Please stop doing this. I was forced to go through a tutorial before I played this game. And the tutorial gave me, you guessed it, Xbox 360 button prompts. Do I have a 360 or Xbox One pad plugged in? Hell no. Common problem, seen it in a lot of games, and of course it made doing the tutorial pretty tricky, considering I had to guess what the buttons were. You might say, well, TotalBiscuit, why didn't you just go to the options menu? Because it doesn't let you do it until you've beaten the tutorial. Who decided that was a good idea? I will never know. And that is good for them, trust me. So, that was fun. I bashed random buttons until I figured out what was the right one, and was eventually able to beat the tutorial. Alright, let's head to battle settings and see what we can see. So if we head to controller here, you will notice that all of these are bloody useless. You can rebind, but you're going to be rebinding on the basis of Xbox 360 and Xbox One controllers. If you want to rebind your keyboard, you're fresh out of luck. The game does not let you do that, because presumably they're idiots, I have to assume. Here's the button preview. You'll notice that my hitbox works perfectly with basically no latency when I'm using Xpadder. There are a couple of other alternatives. I believe there's something called 360 CE that emulates a 360 controller. So you can use that on other stuff. And that should do the job as well. But I personally find that Xpadder works really, really well for me. It is a little bit of an old program, but it is one that does work. So that's okay. The command list, thankfully, uses the indicators that you saw there for things like punch and kick, as opposed to actually giving you Xbox 360 inputs, which is nice. So, thank you for that. I certainly appreciate it. Here's your normal throws. There's my critical art. This is the V system right here. This is a new system within Street Fighter V. Kind of replaces focus, and those are all my controls and moves for Rashid, who is currently in my main. So that works fine. No real problems here. I mean, you would hope, at least, with the PC version, you'd get basic mouse control in the menus, but you're fresh out of luck there too, because there's nothing. You can use cursors, or you can use your controller, and that is about it. What about actual options, though? Well, the game at least does have some of those. If you head to graphics settings, you will see lots and lots of resolution options here. I just cranked it. Shall I crank that Soldier Boy some more? Soldier Boy has been cranked. That's at 4K. Game sports very high resolutions. Obviously, I'm using DSR right now because I don't have a 4K monitor. Let's turn that back down to a sensible mode, shall we? You know, the weird thing is I could probably run this at 4K with DSR downsampling, and it would be just fine. The game runs rock solid on my machine, but the minimum requirements for running this at 60 FPS, I think at about medium, which basically makes it look like a console, are a GTX 960 or the equivalent of that. Which is about right, by the way. That is fairly similar to what the consoles are running. So, really, that's totally fine. But if you're running much, much older hardware, then beware, because Street Fighter V does have higher system requirements than Street Fighter 4 does, and as a result, if you want that smooth 60 FPS experience, which you really need from a fighting game, bearing in mind this game is locked at 60, which is very common for fighting games, by the way. Nothing unusual about that. You need it for your frame timings. So, it's the one genre that gets a pass when it comes to an FPS lock, even though it's 60 anyway, so that's pretty much fine. But one way or the other, if you're running spec lower than the 960 or the equivalent of that, then expect to have to knock down your resolution in your settings. There is a low spec mode that you can run, which is a thing that you can just launch through Steam by right-clicking on the game and clicking launch low spec. You might want to try using that. If we head to other settings, you will see really nothing of note for the PC platform here. Head over to sound. At least you've got separate audio sliders, so that's okay. And you can also pick your character, voice language, and menu background. And screen settings is for adjusting the HUD. That's really about it. If we head to picture quality here, you will see what those settings comprise of. So, picture quality currently on custom. You can also set it to automatic, which should, in theory, give you the right settings for maintaining 60 online and offline. If you play and it dips below 60 in single player, which the game doesn't have a lot of, by the way, but I'll get into that in my full WTF when I get around to doing so, which will probably take a few days, so I'm going to chemo tomorrow. The game will slow down. Online, it won't slow down, because that would be terrible for everybody, so it frame skips. So it means that the animations will look jerkier, but it will keep the pace with the other person. So you can scale resolution. You know, I like this. This is a fairly recent addition to quite a lot of games. I like the fact that they're adding this. Basically, this allows you to... I always mix up upscale and downscale. I'm pretty sure you're upscaling here. Yeah, you're upscaling. So it's rendering it at a lower resolution, but your monitor stays at the identical resolution that you set it to. So that's going to give you more frames if you are running on a lower system. AA, I don't know what kind of AA this is because it doesn't tell you. I hate it when games don't tell you what kind of AA this is. It could be FXAA, in which case I might want to turn it off. But, I mean, it looks fine to me. I just don't know what kind of AA it's running. Post-processing here, again, I don't know what that comprises of because it doesn't bloody tell you, which is a little bit annoying. Shadows, textures, and effects. Like I said, my machine runs this at 60, but if it didn't, there'd be something seriously wrong with this game. Because yes, while it is a visual improvement over Street Fighter 4, it's not that much of a visual improvement over Street Fighter 4. So, that's pretty much the PC version in a nutshell. Like I say, major problems include the fact that the servers aren't bloody working right now, as well as the lack of mouse control and menus, the lack of ability to use direct input devices, and the lack of ability to rebind the damn keys. Also, the fact that the game displays Xbox 360 inputs, regardless of whether or not you have an Xbox 360 device plugged into your machine. These are all bad things. These are all thankfully easily fixed. But as a launch experience, this is a game that you might want to hold off on the basis of its port. Yeah, sure, it runs fine, but it is missing key features. It's also difficult to invite people to games. You need their CFN ID. You can't actually do it through Steam directly, in my experience. There may be a way, but you can't do it in the usual way by just bringing up Steam friends and saying, hey, get in here. I'll show you a bit of the game. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I'll show you what it looks like on PC at maximum detail. I'm running this at 2560 by 1440 and capturing at that because, hey, it means that shadow play will look a little bit better on YouTube because I'm using a higher bit rate. And Shadowplay tends to be a little bit blurry, but, you know, I wanted to try and keep that frame rate at maximum. I will say one thing, by the way, it's missing the benchmark mode, which is kind of annoying. I don't really know where that went, because Street Fighter 4 had a benchmark, which would say, hey, yeah, so this is how well it's going to run for you. This does not appear to have one. Yep, I am not logged in. God, isn't it lovely to have an always connected fighting game where all of these things that you earn you can't actually keep if you're offline. You might not be aware, by the way, but Street Fighter V has an earnable currency system, which is going to allow you to unlock future characters in DLC, which is in itself kind of a neat feature, because it means you will not necessarily have to buy that DLC, but simultaneously, it also means that you have to be connected to the server to make sure that you're not cheating to get additional currency. So, that sounds okay in theory, but it does mean you have to be online, which means the servers have to work. Guess what happens when the servers don't work? None of that. Ah, hello, Boobs McGee. There we go. But equal opportunities characters in this game. Rashid is a hot, hot man. And there's Hot Ryu, of course, as you're well aware. And if you're looking for boobs, well, this game has them in abundance. And, of course, PC renders those boobs at the highest possible resolution. Unfortunately for Boobs McGee, I'm kind of kicking her ass right now. Rashid's a pretty fun character, actually. Game runs totally fine. I will say that the loading times between matches are excessively long. I'd love to show you that, because the game uses kind of a lobby system in which you can play the very limited single player while you're waiting to get into a match through the fight challenge system. And then it takes ages. It brings up this versus screen. It takes a good 7 or 8 seconds. Now, as of last week, I am now running my games on a PCI Express SSD, which is frickin' fast, by the way. It's benchmarking about 4 times as quick as my regular SSDs. So, loading times have basically disappeared. So any loading times that I currently have in the game exist purely because they bloody well coded them that way. And that's exactly what happened here. So these 8-second loading times are just unnecessary, especially when dealing with the AI. So I found that to be bloody irritating. Here, have some of that. As I said, equal opportunities game. Look at that handsome man and his pectorals that he's shoving right into the screen. You promiscuous harlot, you, Vega. Anyway. Unnecessary. So right now, conclusion on the port, yeah, it runs fine, but it's missing a lot of key features, and that's not even going into the game modes that are missing. The online, when it worked, when I tried it last night, when the server was actually up, seemed to be working fine. I had zero latency of any description. The game has not crashed for me up to this point, but there are plenty of people on the Steam forums that are saying that the game is crashing for them. So the game is obviously not stable for everybody. The servers are clearly not stable. And along with the missing features and so on and so forth on the PC platform, I would say that at full price right now, this is a pass until they fix these issues. I would just hold off on it. I mean, really, are you in a rush? Be like Dalzium. Just chill out, relax, do some meditation, play something else that actually works properly. Man, that's a nice dive in there. That's a lot of damage. I like that combo. There we go. It's not that it's a bad game. I actually, as a fighting game, I think it's freaking great so far. But unfortunately, in terms of the PC version, apparently that does not connect on the juggle. It's just not that good, and you know, it's missing things that should be there. Thankfully, at least it runs fine, and we're not running into any performance problems, but broken servers and all those other missing features mean, personally, I'd hold off. My name's been TotalBiscuit. This has been my brief port report of Street Fighter V. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.